I have been working through the Psalms, looking at the Hebrew grammar inductively, as well as giving a running brief commentary verse by verse. So what I've been doing is reading the Hebrew, translating it into English, followed then by a discussion of the grammar, an analysis of the Hebrew grammar, doing it inductively, along with, as I said, commentary, brief commentary, as well as New Testament application. We begin in this video with Psalm 24. It is a hymn that has to do with the ark being brought back to Jerusalem. In 2 Samuel chapter 6 and 1 Chronicles 15, the Jebusites were defeated, and everything passed into the hand unto David the king. So now he is going to bring the ark, or he is bringing the ark of the covenant back to Jerusalem from the house of Obed-Edom. And as he's doing this, this psalm celebrates that occasion. And it looks like we're looking at the ark as it is coming into Jerusalem. And this psalm was no doubt sung. And then later it was applied and sung on the first day of the week in the Jewish world. And so the Septuagint, by the way, gives that background of 2 Samuel 6. But let me just go into the Hebrew. We begin by an exaltation of the Lord. Notice it begins, Le David Mizmor, that is a psalm belonging to David. Le Adonai ha'aretz u'melu'ah tevel ve'yoshevei. The earth is the Lord and its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it. Notice here, Yoshevei is a cow active participle, or a cow, I should say a cow participle, masculine plural. Notice with the holum and the tseriyod, we're looking at a participial form in construct with va. That is the world and those that dwell in it, or the dwellers of it. And notice the inseparable preposition, the bait, and the the pronominal suffix, third feminine singular. And then the psalm goes on, David goes on, Kihu al yamim yesada, va al neharot yechoneneha. That is, for he has established it upon the seas, and he has, or founded it, we could say, upon the seas, and he has established it upon the floods. Notice, as we look at this, we're probably thinking back to Genesis, where we had the waters above and the waters below, and the Lord establishes the world from that context, or from that situation. Referring back to that, and no doubt the psalm is doing that. And now notice at some of the grammar. For the Lord now is being praised in this causal reason, for he is the great creator. And he has established it, that is the world, upon the seas. Notice Yesada is from Yasad, to found, I guess we could say, to found upon, or to sit upon. And notice it's a cow perfect, third masculine singular, with the pronominal suffix, third feminine singular, in the a. So he has established it upon the seas and upon the floods. Naharot Yehoneneha. He has established it. I should say he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. Notice Yehoneneha is a middle weak verb from kun. And here we have opolel imperfect, third masculine singular, with the pronominal suffix, third feminine singular, in the a. So he has established it upon the floods. Notice when we have this middle weak root, kun, when we want to make it intensive, we cannot do a PL in grammar. So what has happened, we have a polel, where when you have those middle weak forms, you then, what you see is a gemination of the final consonant, and then with the holim vav, can I say vowel at between the first and second consonant of the verb. And then it's preceded, of course, by the yod, making it a third person singular. Then we go on in verse 3, Mi Yahaleh Behar Adonai, Umi Yakum Bimkom Kodsho. Who will ascend unto the mountain of the Lord, and who will stand in his holy place? And literally in the place of his holiness. Notice as we look at this, Ya'aleh is from Allah, to go up or ascend. And here we have the interrogative pronoun who will ascend. Notice we have a cow imperfect, third masculine singular, from Allah. So who will ascend unto the mountain of the Lord, and who will stand? Umi yakum. Notice kum, again, is the middle weak verb to stand. It's the cow imperfect, third masculine singular, from kum. And so mi yakum bimkum kodsho. Who will stand in his holy place? In other words, who is able to enter in and have access to the Lord's presence? Having said that, we now move on to describe who is qualified according to the psalm. Notice it says, verse 4, Neki chapayim uvar levav, asher lo nasa lashav nafsho, velo nishba lemirma. That is, he who has cleanliness of hands, or clean hands, and purity of heart. Notice var here means purity, and it's in construct with levav, purity of heart. So one who has clean hands, not contaminated by cruelty or dishonesty at all, and one who also has not, who has a pure heart, a heart that is not deceptive but pure. Asher lo nasa l'shav nafsho, who has not lifted up his soul to vanity. Notice again, nasa is your cow perfect, third masculine singular, from nasa, who has not lifted up to vanity his soul. In other words, he basically is going to be an honest person who is not lifting up his soul to do that which is not right. And I think nafsho here is the way I would read it, who has not lifted up his soul, following the kativ at this point. And then we go on in the next phrase, Velo nishba lemirma, and he has not sworn deceitfully or deceptively. Notice nishba is your nifal perfect, third masculine singular from shava, to swear deceptively or deceitfully. So he basically is not going to be false in his words. I remember we think about Jesus, the Lord Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says, let your speech be yes, yes, and no, no. Don't swear in a deceitful way. And we see this here and affirmed by the Lord Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Then he goes on, verse 5, Yisa beracha me'et Adonai, u'tzedekah me Elohei Yish'o. He will receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Again, looking at the verb, first verb here, Yisa, is a pei-nun verb from nasa. And notice historically it would have been yin-sa, becoming yisa. That's why we have the doggish forte in the scene here. So he will receive a blessing from the Lord, one who is of this, can I say, nature, and whose life and character parallels what the psalmist is saying, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. In other words, the Lord will vindicate the righteous and treat him in a proper way, the psalmist is saying. Then as we move on in verse 6, Zedor dorshav mevakshe fanecha Yaakov Selah. This is the generation, and I'm reading this as a plural, dorshav, a cow active participle or a cow participle, masculine plural, and following that reading, because of mivakshe, the PL plural participle that follows. So as we read on then, this is the generation of those who seek him, is the way I would translate it. Mivakshe fanecha, of those that seek your face, O Jacob, Selah. Notice mivaksha is from the root bakash, to seek. Here we have a PL participle, masculine singular from, or masculine plural, a PL participle, masculine plural from bakash, to seek. Notice we have a mem prefix indicating a participle followed by a shava under it and a patha, which gives it away as a PL. So those who are seeking your face, O Jacob, and no doubt the thought goes back to Genesis, where Jacob wanted to seek the face of the Lord, and he wouldn't let him go until he blessed him. And so those who want the Lord's presence and seek his face are like Jacob. I think this is what the psalmist is saying. Then as we go on in verse 7, we're looking at the entrance of the ark as it comes in to the gates of Zion, as it's about ready to enter the city at this time. And so we read on, verse 7, Sa'u sha'arim roshechem, v'hinasu'u pitchei olam. Notice, lift up, and then the last phrase, V'yavo melech ha'kavod. Lift up, O gates, your heads, and be lifted up, everlasting doors, and the King of glory will come in. Notice Sa'u is from Nasa, to lift up. It is a cow imperative, second plural, second masculine plural from Nasa. So lift up, O gates, your heads, and be lifted up. Notice the hinasa'u again is from nasa, noon verb, but here we have a nifal, imperative, masculine plural from nasa. Notice we have the hey prefix and the a vowel pattern, indicative of the nifal stem in the imperative. And we have an I, a hirik, followed by the doubling of the noon. And that's because in the nifal, historically, hin nasa'u became hin nasa'u, where the noon of the nifal has assimilated by progressive assimilation into the noon of the root. So we would lift it, we would read it then in verse 7, be lifted up, everlasting gates, and the King of glory will come in. By Yavo Melech HaKavod. Notice Yavo is from bo, to come. It is the cow imperfect third masculine singular from bo. So the King of glory will come in. And then, as we have those watching the gate, they are going to respond. And this is an antiphonal kind of a psalm where we're going to hear their voice now. And so we move on to the next verse, verse 8. Mi ze melech hakavod, Adonai Izuz v'gibor, Adonai gibor milchama. Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord mighty of battle. Notice here we're looking at those at the gate are asking, who is it that's entering in? And the reply comes from those making the reply is that it's the Lord, strong and mighty, and the Lord who is mighty of battle. I think we're looking back here in the context at how David had received Jerusalem from the Jebusites. That's the how that he had actually been given victory over the Jebusites and had entered into Jerusalem. So that's the context. Again, going back in the Hebrew Bible to how David actually makes Jerusalem the center for the capital and at that time. So this is the context, I believe. And then we go on in verse 9, a repeat. Sa'u sha'arim roshechem usa'u pitchei olam v'yavo melech ha'kavod. Lift up, O gates, your heads. Lift them up, everlasting doors, and the King of glory will come in. Again, we have the cow imperative, masculine plural from Nasa. Lift up, O gates, your heads, and lift them up, everlasting doors. We're looking at the gates of Jerusalem, which had been there for a long time, and the King of glory will come in, pictured as the ark coming in, the King of glory. And notice Yavo is from the root bo, it's the cow imperfect third masculine plural. And then we conclude in verse 10 with the question, Mi hu zem melech hakavod. The sentries at the gate are asking, who is this King of glory? And the reply is, Adonai Tsevaot, who melech hakavod selah, the Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Notice Adonai Tsevaot. Here we have the tetragrammaton that is in construct with Tsevaot, host. And host looks at the great heavenly bodies, the angelic beings that the Lord is, can I say, Lord over. And so he is the King of glory. And hence we're picturing the Lord coming into Jerusalem at this time. The background again, I believe, being 2 Samuel chapter 6, as David is bringing the ark into Jerusalem. In terms of New Testament application, a number have suggested that when we take the three Psalms together from a Christological perspective, Psalm 22, Psalm 23, and Psalm 24, that they announce very, can I say, interesting themes that we find in the New Testament. First of all, Psalm 22, looking at the prayer of Christ upon the cross. And we've already done a grammar of Psalm 22. This is followed then by the Good Shepherd of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. And John 10, how Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd. And then finally, Psalm 24, looking at the ascension of Christ after his death upon the cross, ascending into heaven, the gates of heaven, that eternal, can I say, city. And so the New Testament seems to apply, or does apply, I believe, these three great Psalms by way of theme, starting with the cross, going to Jesus as the Good Shepherd, and culminating in his ascension after his resurrection into glory.